Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Evangeline and I am a script editor and a screenwriter, and today's video is going to be a script editing... What the fuck? I have no idea where my nail's gone. Today's video is going to be a script editing, screenwriting advice, tips sort of video. I wanted to do a reaction video, but I've had the craziest week. Genuinely, I'm so tired and I've just not had the time, and the reaction videos that I do take a really long time to film and edit, so I'm gonna try and do that next week. This week I'm just gonna do, as the video title says, I'm gonna do the most common mistakes that I come across as a script editor. So yeah, I don't want it to be a really long video, so I'm just gonna get straight into it. I just want to preface this before I get into the mistakes. When I'm talking about these mistakes, I'm coming from the point of view of someone who is reading and editing a spec script. So I'm not talking about like shooting scripts, or you know, like obviously sometimes writers who intend to direct will write their own script. I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about a spec script. So that is basically just the basic script that a screenwriter will write with the hopes of getting it published one day. And you know, bought or made into a film, or whichever way you want to put it. So yeah, just bear that in mind, because I know that some of these things people might be like, well actually, but I'm coming at it from the perspective of editing a spec script. So the first mistake, and it's a really simple one to solve, and that is no title page. I love a title page. I receive a lot of scripts that don't have title pages, and when I like talk to the writer, my client, about it, they often say that they just didn't think it needed one at this stage. It absolutely does. It doesn't give off the best kind of first impression. Yeah, I get it, I'm just a script editor, like, you're not trying to impress me. But the first thing I'm gonna say, my feedback is, where's the fucking title page? So just to avoid that, put your title page in, all right? But the next point I'm gonna talk about is everyone's favorite, scene headings. I fucking hate scene headings, to be perfectly honest with you. I do have a video actually on scene headings, and I'll try and link it if I figure out how to do that, because that I go into a lot more detail about like just scene headings in general in that video and how to use them and the different types of scene headings. But the main mistake that I come across is people not using them at the correct time. Sometimes people use a scene heading when the scene hasn't changed, or they don't use one and the scene has changed. So the best way that I remember it, and I always tell my clients, is you've got the scene heading. I'll like put an example. So you've got the scene heading, and you've got the like three components of the scene heading. You've got the interior or the exterior, you've got the location, and then you've got like the time of day. So whether it's day, night, you can be a bit more specific if you want. Basically, best way to remember, oh, I need to put a new scene heading in here, is if any one of those components change. So even if, say, your characters are walking, as an example, through like a school, and they move from the interior of the school to the exterior, and they're still having the same conversation, it's still kind of like the same scene in that sense, but they've moved from interior to exterior, you have to change the scene. Excuse me. You have to change the scene anyway, and have a new scene heading. So the next one is always controversial one. I always find people bite back when I mention this one, but the third mistake I commonly find is shot types. So don't put shot types in your screenplay, okay? Please. I get it's so tempting, because you're you know, screenwriters are visual people, like, you know, we're imagining this film that we're writing in our head, and you're imagining like certain shot types, and I completely get it, but don't do it, and here's why. If you're trying to sell a script, the last thing you want to do is annoy the director that's reading the script, or the producer that's reading the script, by kind of overstepping. So it's not your job to figure out the shot types. That's cinematographer, DOP, director's area. You're just here to write a banging story. You can insinuate towards it. You could say, if you wanted a close-up, someone's hands, when you're the way you write the actual action, you can just put all the emphasis on the hands, and then you're kind of insinuating that that's a very important thing that needs to be focused on, and kind of, you know, subliminally putting that out there for the director, DOP, whatever. So yeah, just avoid shot types at all costs, okay? So the next one is, this is a bit of a broad one, but it's structural beats that are missing. Structure, I'd say, is like the area, like you have like structure, story, character. They're the kind of 3 areas that I split, and formatting, that I split like my editing into. Structure is the one that tends to need the most work, because it is tricky. It's so tricky to get the structure right. All these things, by the way, all these mistakes that I'm calling out, I make them too. Like, it's not like I'm saying, oh my god, I'm perfect. So I have like friends and writing buddies that I send my scripts to, and they point out these things to me as well. So I do it too, okay? I'm just gonna put that out there. I find that the structural beats that tend to be missed the most are either in Act 2. So Act 2 is like famously like the hardest act to get right, because Act 2 can either feel too long or too short, or like not enough's happening. So I'd say any of the beats in Act 2, and then the climax and the bit before the climax, like the bad guys close in, Dark Knight kind of area where your character's like at its lowest and thinking that they've completely failed and that everything's gone to shit. And then obviously you have the climax. I always recommend certain books. My absolute favourite one to recommend is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. There's a beat sheet in there, and whenever I'm writing, I always work out my beats along with that beat sheet, and it just really helps recognise the areas that aren't fitting into a beat. And also having other people read your scripts and then kind of say, no, I'm not identifying this structural beat, is probably the best way to combat that. And then obviously working on that and moving things around and stuff like that. So yeah, pay extra close attention to your structure. I feel like people might think it's a bit boring, but honestly, it can change a script completely if you can get it right. So the next mistake I have is a lack of character's voice. So this is just when the characters just seem a bit meh and the dialogue is a bit meh. Well, what I always say to people when I'm editing is, if you took away all the character like tags from your script and just read the dialogue, could you tell who was saying what dialogue? I think that's a really good way to look at it, because people like in real life, all speak differently, all have like little quirks, like speech quirks. There's obviously certain accents, just ways to kind of make your characters feel a bit more real, and like they actually have their own voice and they're not just kind of there for plot purposes. And yeah, the really your characters feel, the more your audience is going to connect to them at the end of the day. So character voice is really, really important. So I've got another formatting one, transitions. Transitions really aren't that necessary. The only time you need to use a transition is if it's like, if it kind of contributes and it's vital to what the story you're telling. So say if there's like a jump cut or something, that's something you would want to put in if we jump ahead in time. Or for example, when like, I can't remember what it's called, and I should know, but I don't. But when like a character will say like, oh, we can't do that, and then you cut and they're doing exactly that, those moments would benefit from a transition, because it actually adds something to the story. But if you're literally just putting cut two, it's not necessary. So the next one is too much description. Now, I'm terrible for this. I definitely over explain in my action when I'm writing. I have to like send my scripts to my writer friends who will literally say this isn't necessary, this isn't necessary, this isn't necessary. For me personally, it's the hardest part to get right when it comes to screenwriting, is getting the balance of action correct, because obviously you don't want to under explain things, but you don't want to over explain things. I think the best way to remember it is that film is a lot faster paced than say when you read a book. Therefore you don't want big chunks of dialogue, big chunks of action like you'd get in a book, because it's a completely different format, and film's like it's motion, it's in motion, it's flowing. So you want the script to flow in a similar way to kind of emulate that. So yeah, watch out for over explaining. That's what script editors are here for though, so yeah. Next one, expositional dialogue. This expositional dialogue is like my kryptonite. Like if I'm watching a film and there's like exposition, it's really hard to say, expositional dialogue, it makes me physically like I hate it so much. Sometimes it's like borderline, you're like, okay, that's fine, it was kind of needed, whatever, but it's like, it's just the character's clearly saying something for the benefit of the audience and it's completely unnatural in that situation. I can't think of an example right now, but you know, say if me and you, we know that my mum's just died and we're having a conversation, I'm like really sad, and then I'm just like, it's just been so hard, you know, since mum died. Like, I wouldn't say that because you know that my mum's dead. My mum's not dead, by the way. God bless her. That made it sound like she's dead even more. She's not dead. Oh my God, my mum's not dead. So sorry, mum, if you're watching. We know that mum's dead, so therefore, I don't need to say it. You don't need to say it. If you want to tell the audience that, tell them in a visual way. It's the most important thing. Visual storytelling. Last one, and that is pointless scenes sell. What I always tell people, and I can't remember where I read this or where I saw this, but I read it in some sort of book, I think. If I can find it, I will reference it, but I genuinely don't think I will, because it's just something that like I wrote on a post-it note one day and it's always been stuck up on my wall. And it's basically when you're writing and you're reading over your work and you're looking at a scene on its own, you're just thinking, right, look at the scene. If the scene doesn't do one of two things, reveal something about the character or move the plot along, or both, cut it, just get rid of it. It's not needed, and you've got to be cutthroat, and it's horrible because sometimes you're like, oh, I really like this scene, but it's just not giving much to the story, and the story and the characters' arcs and everything would still be complete and would still end up the exact same way that it would with that scene, and without it, just cut it, because it's just adding extra shit into the screenplay which just isn't necessary. And as mentioned previously, it's moving image, it's flowing, it's motion. You don't want scenes kind of slowing that down, because that will ruin the vibe. But sometimes those things are hard to spot, and it's getting another pair of eyes on it that help spot those things. Which is why if you want, you know, if you want a script editor, hit me up. So that's it. That is the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. The link to my script editing website is in the description, and if you're interested, you can take a look at the services I provide. You can request a quote, all that sort of stuff. But please comment below any pieces of valuable advice you've ever been told during your time as a screenwriter. And yeah, I will try and film a reaction video next week. If not, then I'll try and think of something to do instead. But yeah, thank you for watching if you're still here, and I'll see you next week.